Okay, so ready to dive into a topic
Yeah.
that's often surrounded by judgment
Right.
and misconceptions. Obesity.
Yeah.
Is it a choice?
Mm.
We hear that a lot. Or is there more to the story?
Right.
I think we've all kind of felt like struggled with this in some ways or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to unpack this, go beyond
Yeah.
the oversimplified solutions that we hear all the
Yeah.
time, like
Yes.
eat less and exercise more.
Totally.
And I'm really excited to have you here because we've got this book, The Obesity Code,
Yes.
by Dr. Jason Fung, and it really, I think, it challenges a lot of
Absolutely.
assumptions.
It's fascinating how, like you said, we tend to view it through this lens of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
But Dr. Fung's book really kind of throws a wrench in that thinking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He argues that it's far more nuanced than simply willpower or a lack of self-control.
For sure.
You know? I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, I went into this book, thinking I had a pretty good grasp on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff in here that's really eye-opening.
For sure.
Like one of the things that really struck me was this fact that obesity rates
Yeah.
have skyrocketed
Yeah.
since the 1970s.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge.
And that was like coinciding with this rise of
Oh, absolutely.
low-fat dietary recommendations from, official sources.
It makes you wonder if there's a connection there.
Yeah,
right?
makes you wonder.
It really challenges the assumption that simply reducing fat intake is the answer to weight control.
Right.
And what's even more striking is that this period also saw a huge increase in the consumption
Yeah.
of refined carbohydrates and sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Fung argues that these dietary shifts have played a significant role in the obesity epidemic.
Well, that's where I think things start to get really interesting.
Absolutely.
Because his whole argument hinges on this idea that it's not just about calories.
Right.
It's about the types of calories and how they affect our hormones.
It's about the quality of the calories.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he really points the finger at
It has.
insulin resistance
Yes.
as a major driver of weight gain.
And that's a point that bears emphasizing,
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think they know about insulin resistance,
Right.
but I thought Fung really delves into the mechanisms in a way that I found really insightful.
Yeah.
He explains that when our cells become resistant to insulin,
Mm-hmm.
it throws off our entire metabolic system.
Right.
You end up with higher insulin levels circulating in your blood,
Okay.
and that excess insulin actually promotes fat storage.
Wow.
So even if you're eating fewer calories overall,
Right.
your body might still be holding on to fat
Yeah.
because of this hormonal imbalance.
Okay, so we've got this hormonal system that's kind of
Working against us in a way?
working against us.
Yeah,
And then he goes on to highlight specific foods
right.
that exacerbate this problem. And one of the things that I found really surprising was fructose.
Interesting.
He calls it a sweet poison.
Yeah, that's one of the parts
Yeah.
that really made me stop and think.
Yeah.
We know food is generally good for us,
Right.
but Fung explains that the form in which we consume that sugar matters.
Okay.
Fructose, whether it's from fruit juice
Yeah.
or added sugars, is metabolized differently in the liver
Sure.
compared to glucose.
Okay.
And this unique metabolic pathway can lead to fat accumulation,
Got it.
especially when we consume fructose in large quantities.
See, that was mind-blowing for me.
Right.
Because I always thought fruit juice was a healthy alternative to soda.
Exactly.
So it really challenges our assumptions about what constitutes a healthy diet.
It does.
And then it gets even more complicated when we consider artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
Because we reach for those diet sodas thinking that they're the healthier option.
Ex-
But Fung is arguing that they might actually be backfiring on us.
And that was really interesting to me, too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it seems counterintuitive.
So ditching the sugary drinks for
Yeah.
diet soda
Right.
might not be the solution.
That's what Fung's research suggests.
Huh?
He presents evidence that artificial sweeteners can actually increase cravings
Wow.
and disrupt our gut bacteria, potentially leading to weight gain.
So it just highlights
It really does.
the complexity of
Yeah.
this issue
It's not some...
and how our bodies
Yeah.
respond to different things.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I've got to admit, this is making me rethink my
Yeah.
diet soda habit.
Good date. Same here.
So it sounds like we need to be mindful of
Yeah,
not only the amount of sugar we consume,
right.
but also the type of sugar
Absolutely.
and even those
I
seemingly harmless artificial sweeteners.
Right.
It's about looking beyond the calories
It is.
and understanding these deeper processes,
The physiology.
the physiology at play.
And that's where Fung's insights become so valuable.
Yeah.
He's not just telling us what to eat and what to avoid.
Right.
He's explaining the why behind it.
Okay, so we've talked about the role of hormones.
Yeah.
We've talked about the impact of specific foods.
Yeah.
But what about genetics?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to deny that obesity tends to
Yeah.
run in families.
It does.
Right.
Absolutely.
So does that mean we're just destined to
Yeah.
be overweight if our parents were?
That's a very common misconception.
Yeah.
And Fung addresses it head on in the book.
Okay.
He acknowledges that genetics play a role
Huh?
in our predisposition to obesity.
Okay.
He even cites studies on adopted children
Oh, interesting.
showing that genetics have a significant influence on body weight,
Yeah.
regardless of the environment they're raised in.
But if our genes haven't changed that much,
Yeah.
why this sudden explosion
Right.
in obesity rates?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's where the environmental factors come into play.
Okay.
Fung argues that while our genes might load the gun, so to speak, it's the environment that pulls the trigger.
So the modern food environment,
Yes.
with its abundance of
Yes.
processed foods,
Yes.
sugary drinks,
Yes.
and constant marketing,
Absolutely.
is basically creating this perfect storm
Yeah,
for obesity.
exactly.
Like,
yeah.
it's our genes might make us more susceptible,
Yeah.
but it's the environment that determines whether those genes are
It
expressed.
really does.
Yeah.
The current food environment, with its emphasis on cheap, convenient, and highly palatable foods, is like a breeding ground for weight gain.
It's almost like we're
Yeah.
fighting this losing battle
I can feel that way.
against our biology and our surroundings.
It can.
But I appreciate that Fung's message isn't one of defeat.
Yes.
It's not.
He's not saying we're powerless.
In the face of these challenges.
No, not at all.
So if it's not just about willpower,
Right.
what's the solution?
Yeah.
How do we
How do we work with energy?
overcome
Yeah.
these genetic and environmental obstacles?
That's what we're going to explore
All
in
right.
the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I can tell you this. Fung's approach is all about understanding the science
Yeah.
and working with our bodies, not against them.
Okay.
And it starts with challenging those deeply ingrained assumptions
Right.
about calories, willpower, and personal responsibility.
Right. I'm really intrigued.
Good.
I can't wait to dive deeper into this.
Me too.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. So welcome back.
All right, we're back.
And before we dive into solutions,
Yeah.
I think it's important to challenge one of the most pervasive myths
Okay.
about weight loss.
Okay.
This idea that it's simply a matter of
What?
calories in versus calories out.
Yeah. The mantra we've all heard a million times,
We have.
but Dr. Fung really
Yeah.
dismantles that notion.
He does.
Um,
And one of the most compelling pieces of evidence he
Yeah.
presents comes from a rather unsettling
I saw it.
historical experiment. The
Interesting.
Minnesota starvation experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I remember reading about that.
Okay.
That was during World War II, right?
It was researchers wanted to study the effects of starvation on the human body.
Wow.
So they put a group of conscientious objectors on a severely restricted diet for 6 months.
Wait, so they basically starved these guys for science?
For science.
That sounds incredibly intense.
It was. And
Wow.
what they found was that these men didn't just lose weight.
Okay.
They experienced a whole cascade of
Wow.
physical and psychological changes.
Okay.
They became obsessed with food. Their metabolisms slowed down drastically.
Wow.
And they even exhibited signs of mental distress,
Oh, wow.
like depression and anxiety.
That's pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
But what does that have to do with
Right.
obesity?
Well, the most striking finding
Right.
was that when the men were finally allowed to eat normally again,
Oh,
they gained back all the weight they had lost,
oh wow.
plus some.
Oh, no.
Their bodies were basically fighting to return
Okay.
to their previous weight set point,
Oh.
even if it meant overshooting the mark.
So it's like our bodies have this
Yeah.
internal thermostat
Yeah.
that's set at a certain weight,
Yeah.
and it resists any attempts to change it.
Yeah.
Almost like a set point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Fung argues that this set
Mhm.
point is largely controlled by hormones,
Okay.
particularly insulin.
Okay.
When we restrict calories,
Uh-huh.
our bodies respond by
Right.
lowering our metabolic rate
Well-
and increasing our hunger hormones.
So it's like our body's trying to protect us from starvation,
Yeah.
even if we're not actually in danger.
Yeah, it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective,
Right.
but it also means
Yeah.
that simply cutting calories
Yeah.
isn't a sustainable solution
Right.
for weight loss.
Okay, so that's where Fung's approach diverges
Yes,
from conventional weight loss advice.
it does.
Instead of focusing on calorie restriction,
Right.
he suggests targeting the hormonal imbalances
That's it.
that drive weight gain.
Yeah.
And one of his key strategies for doing this
Yeah.
might be
The fasting. I'll admit, that sounds a bit extreme.
I know it can seem intimidating,
Yeah.
but Fung presents a very compelling case
Okay.
for the benefits of intermittent fasting.
Okay.
He explains that by periodically abstaining from food,
Okay.
we can give our bodies a break
Right.
from the constant insulin spikes
Okay.
that come with.
Eating throughout the day.
So it's not about starving yourself.
Right.
It's about
So that time.
strategically timing your meals
Yeah.
to give your body a chance to reset.
Yes.
Okay.
He talks about different fasting protocols,
Okay.
like alternate day fasting,
Okay.
where you eat normally one day
Okay.
and then severely restrict calories the next.
Got it.
Or time-restricted feeding,
Okay.
where you only eat within a specific window of time each day.
Right, like from noon to 8 p.m. or something.
Exactly.
Okay, that actually sounds
Yeah.
a bit more manageable.
Yeah.
And he's not saying you have to survive on water and lemon juice
No.
during your fasting periods, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of following a nutritious diet on your non-fasting days,
Okay.
focusing on whole, unprocessed foods,
Got it.
and minimizing
Yeah.
those refined carbohydrates and sugar
Right,
that we talked about earlier.
So it's a two-pronged approach.
Exactly.
You're controlling insulin through fasting.
Yes.
And then making sure you're fueling your body with the right foods
Exactly.
when you do eat.
That's it.
Yeah, and the research that he presents on the benefits of fasting is pretty impressive.
It is.
Studies have shown that it can lower insulin levels,
Yeah.
improve insulin sensitivity,
Yep.
and even increase metabolism.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And it's quite a list.
Yeah.
But what about the practical side of things?
Right.
Fasting seems like
It is.
a pretty big lifestyle change.
It is.
Yeah.
Which is why Fung provides a lot of practical advice
Okay.
on how to incorporate fasting into your life
Okay.
safely and effectively.
Okay.
He stresses the importance of starting slowly,
Okay.
gradually increasing the duration of your fasts,
Got it.
and finding a schedule that works for your individual
Right.
needs and lifestyle.
So if you're not a morning person, you don't have to force yourself to skip breakfast.
No.
Right.
He also emphasizes that fasting is not about deprivation.
Okay.
It's about being more mindful of
Right.
your eating patterns
Right.
and making conscious choices
Okay.
about when and what you consume.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me in the book
Yeah.
was how Fung talks about the role of stress
Oh, yeah.
in obesity.
That's huge.
Because it's not just about what we eat.
Right.
It's also about how our bodies
It's about how our bodies respond.
to stress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fung explains that when
Sure.
we're chronically stressed,
Mm-mm.
our bodies release a hormone called cortisol,
Right.
which, like insulin,
Mm-hmm.
can promote fat storage,
Okay.
particularly around the abdomen.
So even if you're eating a perfect diet
Right.
and exercising regularly,
Right.
if you're constantly stressed out,
Right.
you might still
Yeah.
struggle with weight gain.
You might.
Right.
And it highlights the importance
Right.
of incorporating stress management techniques into our lives.
For sure.
Whether it's meditation,
Right.
yoga,
Right.
spending time in nature, or
Yeah.
whatever helps us unwind
Whatever it is.
and de-stress.
So we've got genetics,
Right.
environment, hormones, stress.
It's no wonder
Yeah.
obesity is such a
a complex issue.
complex issue.
It really is.
Yeah, and it's why those simplistic solutions.
It's why those just eat less, move more.
Yeah.
Solutions are so ineffective.
That is so ineffective.
They fail to address the underlying factors
Right.
that contribute to weight gain.
Fung seems to be advocating for a much more holistic approach.
A much more holistic approach.
One that takes into account
all of these facts.
all of these interconnected factors.
Yeah. He even goes beyond individual factors to discuss the societal influences that contribute to the obesity epidemic. That's where things get a bit controversial.
It can.
Right.
Yeah.
It can. He's basically saying that the food industry is, at least in part, responsible
At least in part.
for the rise in obesity.
He is, and he presents a really compelling case.
Yeah.
You know, drawing on research, historical data, and his own clinical experience.
Yeah.
He argues that big food has played a significant role in shaping our food environment, making unhealthy foods cheaper and more accessible, and using sophisticated marketing tactics to promote their products, often targeting children and adolescents.
He even talks about how government policies, like subsidies for corn production, contribute to the problem by making high fructose corn syrup and other refined carbohydrates. Ubiquitous. In our food supply.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder.
It really does.
How much of our choice is actually influenced by these external forces that we might not even be aware of.
Right.
Right.
That's a profound question.
It is.
And it takes us back to that original question.
Right.
Is obesity really a choice if we're constantly being nudged towards unhealthy behaviors by the systems around us?
Fung seems to be suggesting that it's not about blaming individuals.
It's not about blaming.
But it's about...
But understanding the interplay.
Recognizing the complex interplay
of factors
that contribute to the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And working to create a healthier food environment that supports healthy choices.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the science of insulin resistance to the societal influence on our food choices.
Yeah.
But I think what our listeners really want to know is...
Yeah, I think so too.
What can we do about it?
Yeah.
How do we
put this into practice?
Actually put all this knowledge into practice and start making changes. In our own lives.
That's a great question, and that's what we'll be tackling in the final part of our deep dive.
Awesome.
So stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle the big question.
Yeah.
How do we actually put all this knowledge into practice?
Right.
We've learned about insulin resistance, the impact of different foods, the role of fasting.
Yeah.
But what does it all mean for our daily lives?
This is where Dr. Fung's insights become really empowering, you know?
Right.
He doesn't just diagnose the problem.
Right.
He offers like a roadmap for taking control of our health.
And I love that it's not about some crazy restrictive diet or spending hours at the gym.
Right.
It's about
understanding
the principle
and making sustainable changes.
Change.
That fit your lifestyle.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Okay.
Where do we even start?
Fung emphasizes the importance of what he calls real food.
Okay.
You know, think whole, unprocessed foods.
Okay.
Like vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, healthy fats.
Okay, so basically ditching the processed junk and focusing on nutrient-dense options.
Exactly.
And that naturally leads to reducing our intake of refined carbohydrates and sugar. Which we know are the major culprit. When it comes to those insulin spikes.
Exactly.
And he specifically calls out fructose. Right?
He does.
Saying it's even worse than other sugars. He doesn't mince words about fructose.
And he's not just talking about candy and soda.
No, he's not.
Fructose is hiding.
It is.
In all sorts of processed foods.
From breakfast cereals to salad dressing.
Exactly.
And reading labels.
Reading labels is so important.
It becomes even more important.
It does.
Speaking of things to avoid. He's not a fan of artificial sweeteners either, right?
He's not.
Diet soda is out.
Out.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about protein?
Right.
It seems like there's been this big push toward high-protein diets for weight loss.
Fung's perspective on protein is really interesting. Okay. He acknowledges its importance for satiety and maintaining muscle mass.
Right.
But he also points out that it can stimulate insulin release.
So it's not a free pass.
It's not a free pass, just like carbohydrates.
Oh, okay.
He suggests paying attention to the types of protein we're consuming.
Okay.
For example, whey protein and meat tend to raise insulin more than plant-based protein.
Okay, so it's all about finding the right balance. And then there's fasting, which we talked about earlier.
Fasting, yes.
He really sees it as a powerful tool.
For
resetting our hormones.
Yes.
And improving insulin sensitivity.
And he's not advocating for extreme, prolonged fasts.
Right.
He's really focused on intermittent fasting.
Right.
Which is cycling between periods of eating and not eating.
He talks about different approaches like alternate day fasting or time-restricted feeding.
Right.
What are some of the practical tips?
Well, he stresses the importance of starting slowly.
Okay.
And gradually increasing the duration of your fasts.
Got it.
And finding a schedule that works for you and your lifestyle.
If you're not a morning person, you don't have to skip breakfast. He also reminds us that fasting doesn't mean deprivation. It's about being mindful.
It's about making conscious choices about when and what we eat.
This whole approach just seems so much more sustainable.
It does.
Than those crash diets.
The typical crash diets that leave you feeling hungry and deprived. Exactly, and I think that's the beauty of Fung's message. Yeah. It's not about willpower or deprivation.
Right.
It's about understanding the science and working with our bodies, not against them.
It feels like he's giving us permission to stop obsessing over calories.
Yes.
And start focusing on
the quality
of our food.
And the timing.
And the timing of our meals.
Exactly.
And that's incredibly liberating.
It is, isn't it?
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
And makes healthy living feel more achievable.
And remember, it's not just about weight loss.
Right.
Fung's approach has implications for our overall health and well-being.
He talks about
the
potential benefits of fasting.
Yes.
For reducing inflammation, improving brain function.
And
even increasing longevity. It's about taking a holistic view of health. And recognizing that food is not just fuel, it's information that impacts our bodies on a cellular level.
Exactly. I love that.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the answer to the question, is obesity a choice?
Yeah.
Is much more complicated.
It's complicated.
Than a simple yes or no.
It's not black and white.
Fung makes a really compelling case.
He does.
That while we do have choices to make, those choices are often influenced by a complex interplay of genetics. Environment, hormones, and societal factors.
Absolutely. It's multifactorial.
He's not letting us off the hook entirely.
No.
But he is offering a new perspective. That moves beyond blame. And focuses on understanding and empowerment.
I think that's so key.
And that's something we can all benefit from.
We can.
Regardless of our weight or health goals.
Absolutely.
It's about becoming more mindful of our relationship with food.
More mindful.
And taking proactive steps to support our overall well-being.
Absolutely love that.
Food for thought, indeed.
Food for thought.
We've just scratched the surface of this topic.
We have. This is a deep one.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you some new insights.
I hope so.
And inspired you to explore further.
If
you're interested in learning more about Dr. Fung's work, we highly recommend checking out his book, The Obesity Code.
Absolutely.
And remember, taking control of your health starts with understanding the science.
That's right.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep diving deep.